Good morning and welcome to Great Day Houston. Do you hear that? Yeah. The state's largest school district, Houston ISD, starts the new year tomorrow. Every year, people hear this and assume their kids not in HISD must be starting then too. Just so you know, there are different start dates. Some start today, like Galveston ISD. Fort Bend ISD kicks things off tomorrow, but Spring Branch and Klein ISD start class on Wednesday, and Dickinson ISD starts on Thursday. Bottom line, be sure to check school or district websites so your child isn't a day early or a day late. It happens every year. In fact, it happened in my family as well. And I've got a little picture here of my son, the first time he probably ever showed up early to elementary school. All right, just so you know, check the sites. Well, every generation brings new challenges. While students still face bullying and peer pressure, the digital age has added a whole new layer. How can education and AI coexist? And what about the new ban on cell phones in classrooms? There's a lot to talk about, and joining us this morning are people on the front lines of education, and of course, they were once students too. Paul Castro is with Region 4 Education Service Center. Dr. Rebecca Brown is the superintendent of Dickinson ISD, and Evan Weinberger is the founder of Staying Ahead of the Game, an academic coaching and tutoring service. All right, ready, set, go, right? All right, let me start by asking you all, like, what kind of student you were. Like, which student were you? Because, you know, the popular kid, the best dressed, class clown, wallflower, nerd and geek, teacher's pet, most likely to succeed. Paul?
I was a quiet nerd, so we moved around a lot when I was a kid, and as a result, every time I went somewhere, I had to kind of reestablish myself.
Right.
And so I was a person who would be the class clown, but in quiet, and all the jokes were in my head.
Yeah, they were all in your head. Yeah, I moved around a lot too, and you have to decide, are you going to be the wallflower or are you going to hit the ground running, right? So I usually would hit the ground running, and hi, my name's Debbie, what's your name, what's your favorite color? All that type of stuff. All right, Dr. Brown?
You know, I was also a quiet kid. I was raised in Columbus, Georgia, and clearly I was the only Asian. We are Vietnamese immigrants and came in 1975. So I was quiet, teacher's pet, wanted to do what's right, wanted to make my teacher proud and make my parents proud of me.
Yeah, all right. And then Evan?
You know, I was the peacekeeper. I was a lifer at the school I went to. I went to, you know, a small little Jewish school, and I was a lifer there. And so I knew everybody. Everybody knew me. Everybody knew my family. I had two sisters, younger sisters. So I was the peacekeeper. I never wanted to shake the waters.
Yeah.
I didn't want to upset anybody.
But as a student, you had ADHD, which is misunderstood by so many people. We'll talk about it much more today.
You know, I did. There was a lot of chaos behind the scenes. You wouldn't know it from my grades. I was a high performer, but there was a lot of chaos for me behind the scenes, tied to my struggles with attention, reading, etc.
Yeah, which is what leads to what you do today. You're the father of three, and your whole perspective is all kids can learn. You just have to figure out how. And there are some basic skills that you do. Tell people about what SATOG does.
So I'm a big fan of executive function skills. That set of skills that lies at the foundation of every kid's success. Organization, physical, and now digital with the growing amount of work that never sees paper. You know, time management, study skills, learning skills, and then self-presentation or impression management skills, how you show up. So I'm executive function skills, every student doing well in school and sustaining that performance is developing and mastering those skills. I'm preach a lot about the power of those executive function skills.
Yeah, it was interesting because what you're talking about, we should all be taught at that level, right? Because it's the same thing that CEOs have to do to run companies and successful people have to do to run their lives, right?
Absolutely.
All right, well, we just kind of learn it way too late, kind of like financial math. All right, Paul, you thought you wanted to be an engineer, and as fate would have it.
Yeah, it didn't work out exactly. So I always liked math, and the day before I took the SAT, I read this story about engineers making a lot of money, and I said, I think I'd like money, and so I bubbled in on my SAT, like I'd like to study engineering. But once I actually got there, I decided, with the help of actually one of my professors, I really wanted to work with kids, and so I made that decision, and I've never looked back.
Yeah, tell us what Region 4 does.
So Region 4 is one of 20 educational service centers in the state of Texas. We serve 90 school districts and charters. We have 1.2 million kids under our domain, and we're not about regulations. We're not supervisory over the districts. We're there for support. So we provide services, we provide trainings and professional development, and we help districts with things like student performance, finances, and compliance. So we have an amazing team of people who go out there and make sure that school districts have whatever supports they need to get kids where they need to be. It is huge. It's giant.
Yeah. All right. Rebecca, you talked about earlier being the daughter of Vietnamese immigrants, and we know that oftentimes, I started my life in Taiwan, but we know oftentimes oftentimes when people come to America, education is not necessarily free in every country around the world.
Right.
This is something our forefathers set out
true.
to do.
That's true.
And so a lot of times immigrants will come in with a different perspective, and that is your delivery system is going to be through the education system.
Right, that's totally true. My parents instilled in us at a very young age that education is the power for opportunities and the key to building a success. And so I've dedicated 30 years of my life inspired by ensuring that students just like me and students across our country and our city have everything they need to be successful in education, because that is the game changer. That's the power of what we have in the United States is
and as a
public
superintendent,
education.
sometimes people ask, well, now what does the superintendent do?
Right, so our role is ensuring that our community here at Dickinson ISD, we have over 12,500 students. My role is to ensure that every parent, community, and students have all the opportunities for them, not just through pre-K through to 12, but beyond, ensuring that they have choices as they leave and graduate from our district.
All right, earlier I said, best dressed, class clown, all that, so we all knew most likely to succeed. We knew what that was. It has changed, surprise. 2026 through the 20s brought, some new stuff. BlogTreeRing.com says, future viral sensation or TikTok star, that's the things that they look at now, right? Next reality TV star, most likely to make space travel affordable. Future app creator, most likely to get a deal on Shark Tank. Future AI specialist, and most likely to run for office. All right, so things have changed. Speaking, a lot of that has to do with our digital age that we're in. And speaking of the cell phone ban, House Bill 1481, this one has been talked about for quite some time, but you all, again, on the front lines, you know what a distraction that can be. So what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, so it's a thing that our state legislature said, this is important. Research is actually really clear about this, how distracting cell phones can be, especially in the classroom space. And what was happening is this is best intentions. So what we really need right now is support from home to say, hey, when this happens, because a lot of parents say, well, we need Johnny to have his cell phone, because what if I have to get in touch with him?
Well, I remember a lot of us saw the news story down in Uvalde where the young girl was calling from inside the classroom. So that strikes a lot of fear in a lot of parents.
It creates a lot of distress and anxiety for parents, so completely understand that. But what we're looking for, and each school district is going to come up with its own rules around that. But the hope is, and I think the intention behind the legislation is, if kids don't have that as a distraction, their performance will improve, and the research actually supports that.
Yeah, and if there is a crisis in school, there is a cell phone in that classroom. That teacher's going to have one.
Yes,
she has contact, right?
Definitely, and it is. Safety and security is our #1 priority. All superintendents across the state understands that. As a parent myself, we understand that parents want immediate one-on-one contact with their student when something happens. So we are aware of that. We understand that every school district is going to have their policies, but we just want to ensure that during instructional time, during the school day, it is all about learning and what's happening in the classroom.
Yeah, speaking of learning, that old AI thing, Evan, have you delved into that?
That is, you've opened a can. So AI is an interesting and moving target, a very fluid topic. You see a lot of school districts and private independent schools moving a lot of the writing to inside the classroom, because frankly, the tools that we have to detect AI use are imperfect, and the free ones and the paid ones both.
Yeah.
And so we know that we don't have a good way to really detect AI with tremendous confidence.
Yeah.
And so you'll see a lot of schools that are, even at the university level, moving critical writing to inside the classroom.
Your essay
under
will be done
observation.
starting now in class.
And the type of work that you bring home is the type of work that even if kids use some AI or incorporate some AI, you even see some teachers asking them to utilize AI for certain topics, so kind of leaning into it, because this is not going away. This is only getting bigger.
Yeah, so we've got to work with it, not against it. All right, we have a couple of viewer questions that we'll have throughout the rest of your segment here. Marisol says, my daughter got a break from the Mean Girls over the summer, but she's afraid it will start up again. It doesn't happen in class, it happens on the school bus, so where do I turn for help? She's afraid of going back to school. Is the school bus an extension of the school campus in a sense?
Definitely. The school bus is part of as a school district, one place that we ensure discipline and watching over our students. That's sad to hear for the child, because as any superintendent would say, and administrator, we want to make sure every child's experience is a great experience in school. So I would say for the parent to go back to the school, talk about what are the procedures for
we
bus.
say talk to the school, the principal,
Yes,
right?
the principal, and the procedures for bus discipline, how the child is feeling, what is happening during the bus time, during the ride, and try to figure out what is going on so that we can make sure that that child is feeling better about riding
There
in
are
the bus.
protocols in place, and I have almost 100% of the time that I've been involved in any of this, I used to do this mediation type of thing between students. Once the two students sat down and looked at each other and said, what are you mad about?
Yes.
Why do you not like her?
Right.
How important is that really? They end up being best friends.